Hello, 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 and welcome back to IVF in Your Pocket, your waiting room companion. In today's episode, I'm going to be covering some basic tips again about how to cope with the IVF wait, 2-week wait, and kind of just summarizing a longer chat that I had with the medical doctors over at Fertility Docs Uncensored and their podcast. If you haven't checked it out, I think it's a good complement to this episode. I'm going to include that episode with my interview with them in the show notes so you can look there. It's a great complement because they talk about the physical medical side of IVF, and they include in each of their show a Q&A, and their Q&A from our episode was really interesting about how long after a first transfer do most clinics or REs do a subsequent transfer. And they have a lot of different questions that come in, mostly focusing on the medical piece because they're 3 REs with a ton and wealth of information and experience. And so I'm going to just summarize so you get a little cliff notes of what that interview was. It was a lot of fun. Their episodes are longer, and we started off by talking about how to survive the 2-week wait. And of course, they know how agonizing the 2-week wait is. It is just such an uncertain time. And we started talking about how surprising it is that people find themselves in the 2-week wait and it being such a torturous time. And so I talked a lot about how people come into my practice often right before transfer during the retrieval process. I don't have people coming in so much during the 2-week wait, but of course I see people through the 2-week wait. And it's often surprising that it's such a kind of time that typically is so common that everyone struggles with, but very few people are prepared for. And so part of what I like to talk about here on this podcast and talked about with them is the importance of preparing for the emotional aspects of IVF, just like you prepare and go through a physical journey. The emotional preparation is so crucial to being prepared, and part of that has to include the 2-week wait. One thing that's so important about the 2-week wait is finding out how long you're actually going to be waiting. Each clinic is really different, and the 3 REs I talked to are from different parts of the country, and so they practice a little differently. And we were able to talk about each clinic has its own timeline. Some clinics say 10 days you're going to do the blood draw to find out if you're pregnant or not, and other clinics will wait longer. And of course, the actual transfer day doesn't count towards the 2-week wait period. The other tip that I talked about is the incredible importance about getting a specific, and they really resonated with that piece of specific distraction plan for you. And if you're on the journey with the partner, your partner, and those distraction plans for this excruciating wait time might be really different. So what distracts one person doesn't necessarily distract another. And yes, this is a time where we do want to distract. So I often am not wanting to tell my patients, hey, let's not feel our feelings, except maybe during the 2-week wait. We want to try to find ways to calm ourselves and to get engaged in something that's not fixation on our bodies or doubting what we did or feeling hopeless or feeling like we know what the outcome is going to be. It's a time where people often find that they are very fixated on their bodies and worried that they didn't do something well or they didn't do something enough. And those feelings can really take over and we can get consumed during this time. And so it's all about, how do I stay engaged in something else? And so this is a great time to think specifically, who am I going to talk to exactly? Who's the best person in my friend group or 2 friends in my friend group that are great at telling a lot of jokes, getting me out of the moment? Which specific TV series am I going to watch that really has me engrossed? What new skill am I going to pick up? this is a great time to start a new hobby or a huge puzzle. If you're into puzzles, this is a great time to any kind of activity that requires your intense focus it's a great thing to do. Or if you have putting something off, this is a great time to pick it up. So if you are big into collaging and you've put a collage back in that attic in the corner room, this is a great week or 10 days to get that back and just get absorbed into a project. If you're outside and gardening, this is a great time to just spend hours outside in the garden with your hands in the dirt. This is the time to get distracted, and it's really important to go into the 2-week wait with a very specific, not general, because there's a lot out there on podcasts and social media about, distraction, but we want to get really clear about which specific distraction activities are going to work. The other thing I talk about in the podcast is the importance of mantras or self-coping care, really statements that you want to tell yourself that I've talked about on the podcast. And a great one that came up that I think the REs really resonated with is, we don't have all the answers until we have the answers. And that's so true during the excruciating 2-week wait. We just don't know until we know. And so it's really great to get your own series of statements that work for you. I've done what I can. Perhaps one of the REs really resonated with this and said, I didn't even realize that I've been using a coping statement, a mantra all along. Like I've given it my best. I've done what I can. Because of course, our providers are so invested like we are in the outcome. And the docs over at Fertility Docs Uncensored are clearly really passionate about this work. And so they really resonated and were kind of trying to identify their own coping statements, their own mantras that they use to support people on the journey. Another really interesting topic that came up is, which I found really fascinating, you might enjoy, is just this idea of like, why is the 2-week wait so brutal? Like there's so much about IVF that's brutal and difficult and challenging. Like why is a 2-week wait? And so we talked about just how high stakes the 2-week wait is. It's at the end of this really intense, almost marathon, if you will, of procedures and hopes and letdowns. And so it's really a culmination of like, okay, did all this mean something? And so we talked about just how high stakes this time is, and that with the 2-week wait, it's very black and white. It's not as nuanced as maybe other parts of the journey were for you. Like hopefully you did have some bad news with your egg retrieval and some good news. And there are other moments where you might have gotten results that were like you had a couple of embryos to work with, or you didn't have enough embryos to work with, but you're going back to square one, or you're considering other options. With the 2-week wait and the pregnancy test, that beta draw, it's like, it's either yes or no. And so it's really high stakes and it's really black or white. This either worked or didn't. There's no in between. And so this just adds so much pressure and just a nerve-wracking experience, in particular, everything that your body's going through, whether you're in early pregnancy or you are injecting hormones to make this transfer work. Your body and mind and heart are going through something intense. And finally, I wrapped up the chat with the Fertility Docs Uncensored with more very specific techniques about accessing meditation, even though they're not IVF specific, on apps like the Insight app or the Calm app. Great resources. Obviously getting support, individual support, couples support, and using those Resolve peer groups are great. And I'm a huge proponent of some real basic restorative yoga poses. And I talked about that at the end of the episode. Some great ones that I went through specifically, and honestly, my personal favorite for really calming the mind and just unwinding, is legs up the wall. Yeah, so easy. Anyone can do it. You don't need to be a yogi. It's super accessible. You just need a wall. You don't even need a wall. You could just use a couch. You just put your legs up and have your palms out if that feels good, and just lie there with your legs up the wall, relaxing. Another one is butterfly is great. And also, of course, most people know of child's pose. These are some great restorative, relaxing poses during this intense, incredibly nerve-wracking time. There were a few other interesting tips and things that came up from that episode. If you are interested, you can check it out. Those were the highlights for today. Hopefully that's helpful. If you know someone who's going through the 2-week wait, please send them this episode. Think about sending them the Fertility Docs Uncensored episode. If you have something to add, I'm always interested in expanding the toolkit of what works. So please reach out to me. You can find in the show notes a link to my website if you want to work with me in my therapy practice in California. I'm taking referrals right now. And also, if you're outside of California and just want to send me a message of something you want to see in an upcoming podcast episode, please let me know. Until next time, remember, you are not alone.